In the New Testament, the childhood and youth of Jesus Christ are conveyed by a figure of silence. The Evangelists bypass this topic, giving rise to numerous speculations of various pseudo-researchers who want to become famous for filling the mythical biblical gap in information, or lacuna. Among the people who misinterpret the Holy Scriptures are Reverend Potter with his book, The Secret of Jesus' Lost Years Revealed, Faber-Kaiser, who wrote a strange study, Jesus Died in Kashmir, Kersten with his study, Jesus Lived in India, and others. Already from the titles of some of these books, one can understand that these modern exegetes deny the canonical version of Jesus' childhood and youth from the Gospel of Luke, according to which he, after traveling to the Jerusalem temple, where he instructed the rabbis and scribes in the law, lived in Nazareth until his baptism in the Jordan River and was in obedience to his parents. Lovers of invented sensations after Jesus' journey to Jerusalem send him to India. The version of the Indian childhood and youth of Jesus is based on a sensational story told in 1887 by the Russian traveler Nikolai Notovich, as well as on the book The Unknown Life of Jesus, published by him later, from which the Indian version of the childhood of Christ originated. According to Notovich's story, in the Buddhist monastery of Hemis near Leh, the capital of Ladakh, thanks to the kindness of the abbot, as well as gifts, an alarm clock, a watch, and a thermometer, an ancient manuscript fell into his hands, telling about a certain Issa and his deeds in Central Asia. According to the manuscript, 13-year-old Issa, not wanting to become anyone's son-in-law, sets off on a journey. First, together with traders, he reaches the Indus, and then goes to the state of Orissa. In the cities of Jagannatha Puri, Benares, Issa allegedly preaches to the lower castes the idea of the equality of all before God. The Brahmins expel Issa, and he goes to Nepal, and then to Persia, where he preaches the one God. After which he allegedly returns to Jerusalem and is crucified on the cross by order of Pontius Pilate. Should we believe the story told by Notovich? There is little doubt about the existence of a text that is currently called the Tibetan Gospel, or the Life of Saint Issa, the best of the sons of men. The full version of the Apocrypha begins with the execution of Issa and is divided into 14 chapters. The abridged version begins the same way, but is divided into only 244 verses. Swami Abhedananda, a follower of Ramakrishna, speaks in favor of the authenticity of the Tibetan Gospel. In 1922, he visited a mysterious Buddhist monastery in Hemis and published translations of a manuscript he had found, along with excerpts from Notovich's book. However, the story told by N. Notovich about the so-called Tibetan Gospel cannot be trusted. It is interesting only for fantasy lovers. It is quite possible that Notovich himself made up the legend about Jesus' journey to India. Facts collected by two experts, Oxford University professor Max Muller and Professor James Archibald Douglas from Agra College. Professor Max Muller debunks Notovich's story from the standpoint of library science. According to Muller, the manuscript called the Tibetan Gospel is not included in the catalogs of Tibetan literature at all. As for Professor Douglas, he debunks Notovich's story using the method of Sherlock Holmes. In 1895, Douglas personally went to Ladakh to the Hemis monastery to check Notovich's version hot on the heels. Then only 8 years had passed since Notovich's journey. In Ladakh, Douglas first interrogates the governor and finds out that Notovich really came to Ladakh and asked for porters and a guide, but was refused, after which he had to return to Kashmir. Then Douglas goes to Hemis and interrogates the abbot of the monastery. But he does not remember any white European with a thermometer, watch, and alarm clock. And the abbot knows nothing about the manuscript. He says that this is a lie, and nothing but a lie. Thus, if we believe Muller and Douglas, as well as other exposers of Notovich, the traveler Young Husband and Dr. Karl Marx, then Notovich was not in any Buddhist monastery and could not have seen any ancient manuscript. This is a lie. Although, of course, during his travels through India, the hoaxer could have collected legends about the adventures of the local Buddha Issa, with which he filled the mythical gap in the life of the real Christ. Of course, to create a sensation and get money for it. This is what happened after the 8th edition of the book, The Unknown Life of Jesus, in 1894. But then what did Jesus actually do in his childhood and youth? So, if Jesus was not in India, what did he do for 18 years? From 12 to 30? Here we need to turn to the gospel story. The authors of the synopses set themselves the task of reviewing the life and deeds of Jesus Christ. In their reviews, the absence of a significant fragment of the life of Jesus Christ is a common figure of silence, according to literary criticism. In cinema, the technique of silence is called ellipsis. It allows you to convey in 2 or 3 episodes a long period of time when nothing essential happens in the life of the hero. This is done for reasons of saving the viewer's or reader's time. Therefore, the evangelist Luke uses precisely the figure of silence. That is ellipsis, when he talks about how Jesus Christ lived after returning from the Jerusalem temple. And he went down with them, and came to Nazareth, and was obedient to them. And his mother kept all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. According to Luke, until his 30th year, Jesus lives in Nazareth and is obedient to his parents. In parallel with this, Christ improves in the fulfillment of the 2 commandments of love, for God and for people. But what exactly did he do? What did he do? The same as all the Jews in Judea. He ate 3 times a day. He wore a tunic, sewn, according to tradition, by his mother, a cloak of cloth and a turban on his head, made of a scarf. He observed the life of people, farmers, wine growers, tax collectors, Pharisees, soldiers. He worked in a carpenter's workshop, helping his supposed father Joseph, because the Jews had a custom according to which the son took over his father's profession. And after his departure, he himself made plows and yokes, these carpentry products, teaching with their help examples of righteousness and active life. Everyone in Nazareth knew Jesus as the son of Joseph the carpenter, and not at all as a strange Buddha who came from India. Hence the puzzled comments about the sermon of the Messiah in Nazareth. The residents did not believe him and said, "Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James, Josiah, Judas, and Simon? Are not his sisters here among us?" And they were offended because of him. And the last thing to the question of what Jesus did during his life in Nazareth, he was preparing for the salvation of mankind on the cross.